Welcome back to Disturbing the Priest. We're here with a very, very special episode. I'm joined by a very evil panel here. We're going to talk about our top five, or just like five, maybe like our five general favorite doom metal records from the 90s. Before we get into it, let me just introduce the panel here. We have the very evil Alister Skull here of Black Spell, very great doom band. He's joining us
Thank
from
you.
the Abyss, it looks like. We
Yeah.
also have Carcuss John here of the Metal Roundtable. Just got off tour with Pentagram. So really, really awesome for you to join me. And we also have Tommy Stewart of Tommy Stewart's Direwolf, Black Dooma Records, and of course the very legendary Hallows Eve. So great for you guys to join me, and thank you.
Good to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well,
it'd be fun.
Carcass John, if you want to start us off with number five, and we'll just go to
Man,
Alistair, Tommy, and then me.
this will be a controversial pick, and I don't know if anybody's ever heard of him, but Decomposed. In fact, I pulled it. I can't find it on vinyl without remortgaging my house. So, Decomposed. Some people will say they're death metal, but I think that they shade more towards doom. In fact, I discovered them from my friend John Perez, who's in Solitude Aeternus, and they would pretty much know what Doom's all about, I would think. That's one of those bands that I think we talked prior to the show about how do you know if it's Doom? And I think if you say Solitude Aeternus, then you pretty much know that's Doom. Um, but I discovered through him because they used some of their equipment on when they recorded In the Darkest Hour. They were in England, and I think that somehow the guitarist of this band, Decomposed, is related to the crazy Arthur Brown. It might even be his father. So somehow there's that connection there. But this is very dreary, heavy, slow, trudging, plodding doom metal. In fact, it's akin to some of the new funeral doom bands that are out there, kind of like Mortiferum or Tomb Mold or Fetid, those types of bands that are super heavy, but they have this element of ambience and melody, but very slow and trudging. So once again, we've created yet another genre of metal, and we're even breaking the death metal thing down to uh, its finer points. But Decomposed is one of my all-time favorites. Um, and this was from 91. We put out a demo in 91, and I think that this full length actually came out in 93. So I was glad you moved our group of what we were going to choose from the 80s to the 90s, because that made it easy. That would be my first pick if I were picking a basketball team for a pickup game at the YMCA, would be Decomposed.
Yeah. Well, like I was telling you off air, we can only talk about Candlemass so much. And I feel like with the 90s, there is so much doom metal. Like it was kind of like the real start of the genre, it feels like. Where in the 80s there were so many bands kind of like, rediscovering doom metal from the 70s and like creating that genre of like traditional doom, where the 90s there's so much crossover, and like the lines of what is doom metal and what isn't start to really blur in this decade. So there's so much to choose, I think. But that's great pick, really cool pick. So to bring us now to the Abyss, Alistair, what's your number five?
So, yeah, I was thinking about, doom metal in Italy back in the 90s because, I mean, for basically most people, doom metal was, probably Death SS, even though they were actually even like traditional metal, not necessarily just pure doom metal. In the early 80s was still they are probably one of the biggest, most important bands out of Italy for the development of you name it, like traditional doom, or especially because of their guitar player, right? I guess everyone of you knows the name of Paul Chain, which is and if it happens that you don't know him, I would suggest you to check this guy out, because Paul Chain was actually, still is a legend, even in Italy, even if we are talking about really underground music, right? But still, probably my one of our personally most important influence is the work of this guy, especially his guitar work. For me, it's really it's outstanding. But the problem is that we are talking about the 80s, right? So, I mean, I'm talking about what he did in the 80s, even if he was still active in the 90s. And so I try to choose something completely different, which probably not many, I guess, not many people know, which is a band called Requiem. And they were actually they started out, I think in 87, 88, something like that. But I picked an album called Via Crucis, which if you wanna delve like more deeper into the Italian doom metal scene, this album is yeah, this is the album that I would suggest you if you are trying to look more into the 90s side, beside the more obvious choices like Death SS or Paul Chain, or the more famous, let's say famous out of this country. So this band Requiem, and this album in particular, is from 91. And yeah, it's that kind of album which has most of the titles are actually in Latin. So I mean, it's quintessentially Italian doom metal. The production is really cool in my opinion. It's like uh, it's a little bit lo-fi, but I'm into that side of the production most of the time. It's what I like the most. So yes, that's my first choice basically, just to even to give you something out of Italy, something that maybe you didn't know before, something like that.
Very cool. All right, Tommy Stewart.
Very cool. Yeah, I wrote that down. You said from Italy, Requiem,
Yes.
Vera Crucis?
Via Crucis, which is
Via
VIA. Yes.
Via Crucis.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to get that. I want to check that out. I was saying it again too for people that might not have
Yeah,
heard it right,
sure,
because
sure.
this is interesting. Okay, mine's much more lightweight. They in the 90s, it was funny for me because I was kind of all over the place in my listening, but uh, and sometimes I didn't know I was listening to what might be construed as doom later because I really wasn't paying attention in that way. But so my number five today starts out with questionably whether it's doom. I think it is. So typo negative bloody kisses, which is kind of an obvious choice, but I have to because I listened to it a lot in the 90s, a whole lot. And to me, it was goth metal in its infancy, maybe, and maybe even a bridge of that, sort of this beginning of a bridge of that to be possibly mainstream, depending on where you were at the time. And I love it that they called Peter Steele the Vampire of Brooklyn in some reviews and things. In some review I read that, that cracked me up. I was like, the Vampire of South Brooklyn, awesome. Um, he said that the album, that all of it is about the goth girl he was with at the time, the ultimate goth girl who was in love with herself. So, you know, I didn't know that in the 90s. I just recently read that. but it's got the the pioneering, the dragging riffs and atmospheric elements that you would find if you're going to get a little gothy, spooky cathedral organ stuff. Yeah, and it was unusual for its time. When did it come out? Was it 95? I can't think of when it came out.
Yeah, 95 because Bloody Kisses came out in 93.
Oh, okay. Bloody Kisses came out in 93. Okay, that's the one I'm talking about. That's the one I think it really kind of opened a new thing. My favorite cuts on it were Christian Woman, and the main thing I liked about that album was this killer version of Summer Breeze, and taking this yacht rock song and turning it into this completely other atmosphere that you can sit in the woods in the dark near a campfire and it makes sense. Or you can have your dark glasses on and be sitting on a beach and just pretend like you're watching a movie because you're not like everybody else there. And so you're an observer, and that's the soundtrack. But I really loved what they did with Summer Breeze, and it was just further confirmed to me that the best way to do a cover is to not cover it, but interpret it using your sounds and the way you want to do it. Even maybe take liberties sometimes with the lyrics a little bit to make it mean something to you. Not a whole lot, a line or two, just here and there. Anyway, I thought it was just a great version of Summer Breeze, and I thought Bloody Kisses was awesome. I don't know how many times I'll listen to it in the middle of the night on the way home from being out too late. I'm driving by myself, and Christian Woman's playing or Bloody Kisses is playing. It's cinematic. I love that album. Anyway,
great record.
I could just go on and on about it, but that's my number 5. Sorry if I went too crazy.
No. Well, it's a great album, man. Like that's definitely a classic for sure.
It's not as heavy as a lot of albums out at the time. It's weird for me. A lot of the albums I did like in the 90s that were Doom oriented were not necessarily all that terribly heavy. Some of it's heavy. I mean, we got 2 songs that basically could have been Carnivore songs. They might have been for all I knew, but they kind of. That's why it's my number 5. There's 2 songs there that almost don't fit, but I accept them.
Yeah. Great pick, man. So to bring it over to me, this is an album that I just had to put it on the list. I really love this record. It pretty much is what introduced me to Stoner Doom, and it's Come My Fanatics. I fucking love this record. I got to see Electric Wizard like live a few years back, and it was just fucking amazing. It was like the first time I ever got to see them. Just Return Trip, Wizard in Black, Son of Nothing. Like this just album melts you, like just so good. I am looking to get this on vinyl soon just because like to hear this through the Kenwoods, like the bass in it is so amazing, man. And the fuzz is just amazing. Love the tone of Electric Wizard. Definitely a more surface level like stoner doom band, but was the one that like pretty much introduced me to the whole genre, and then from there started bringing in everything else. But I love early Electric Wizard, and that's like 97, I believe, that came out.
Yes.
Like late 90s, but just such a killer record, man. And like the art too is so great, like that kind of like psychedelic doom. Definitely introduced that and like influenced that look to like a lot of the later bands in like the 2000 and 2010s. But yeah, man, like even like nowadays, like you have bands like Mephistopheles who are really influenced by like just that look and the whole like psychedelic doom stuff. But yeah, Come My Fanatics is just such a great record, and had to include it. Definitely had to put that on my list. But yeah, that's my number 5 pick. So we're gonna bring this back around to number 4, back to Carcuss John.
Well, since somebody already talked about Typo, I have an alternative. So I'm going to go with Paramecium from Australia. And a lot of people don't know about them. On the Metal Roundtable, we've become friends with several bands down there. And I've been friends with the guys from King Parrot and Twisted Fate and Nocturnal Graves. And Stone Trip and so forth. But Paramecium, I mean, everyone knows who Mortification is, but no one knows who Paramecium is, which boggles my mind. But they are kind of the pinnacle of that part of the world's ability to cross over between death metal and melodic doom. And Exhumed of Earth from '93. That's probably my favorite pick that would kind of generally give you the idea of what they were trying to do back then. Some of their albums are faster, some of them are heavier, but that one kind of has all the elements combined to it. So Paramecium, Exhumed of the Earth from 1993 would be my number 4 pick.
Awesome.
And
Great
by the
pick.
way, I had to get married before I could appreciate Typo Negative because my wife absolutely loves Typo. In fact, it was so bad to the point where I said, okay, all right. I thought, I'd seen him on Jerry Springer. I'd seen him and I thought that they were just shtick. And then the more I listened to them, because she was actually with the Jenner Tortures on tour with them at one point in time, and they toured some with Typo. And, I learned to really appreciate very quickly what they were trying to do. In fact, Johnny Kelly, the drummer, lives here in town in Texas, in Dallas Fort Worth area, and we see him frequently. But anyway, it became very apparent why there was such an attraction to the band itself because Carnivore was one thing I knew about Carnivore, but the Typo Negative was a complete escape from that. It's like you're driving down the highway with your foot in the gas, but you have your foot on the brake now with Typo Negative, and so it was a kind of a juxtaposition, but it was so ambient, cool, and spooky sounding that I just learned to appreciate it almost immediately. So I like to thank my wife, Queen Stephra, for that because otherwise I would have just been continuing to wave them off like a shtick band.
Awesome. Awesome pick, man. All right. Alister, number
Yeah.
4.
So, my number 4 pick will be actually the Trouble self-titled 1990, which, in my opinion, and I guess probably others' opinion, it's really probably it has been an underappreciated album for quite some time, right? Because everyone was talking about Psalm 9 and late 80s Trouble, but that that self-titled album for me it's probably my favorite of Trouble at this point. It's really a gem, fantastic album from from beginning to the end. Especially like The Wolf, the second track is probably still my favorite Trouble song ever, and one of my favorite. At this point, you could even start the discussion if it's like completely a completely Doom album or not. It sounds like a bridge from the 80s to the 90s, especially in the production, in my opinion. But it's a great album. Every single track is fantastic, in my opinion. So yeah, I had to put it in the list 100%. Yeah.
Just a classic, like
Yeah.
90s Doom album.
Yeah.
Just made the
Fantastic.
90s too. Like barely
Yes.
made it, but awesome, awesome pick. All right, Tommy.
Uh, he just put me in the frame of last week. I actually saw the Skull at Maryland Doomfest.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
I was vending there, and in fact, Ron from Trouble was standing next to me. That's where their merch was. So we spent the day together. And anyway, so yeah, it kind of reminded me of that. Yeah, I like that album too. I'm the same way. I probably got Psalm 9 is the one that I would probably listen to the most. I have listened to the most. But okay, this is I can't wait to get to my heavier ones. This makes me, after Bloody Kisses, I almost hate to bring this one up, but this is really one people will fuss about whether it's Doom or not. I go, this is the one album they did that I think is. And then they went off and did other stuff like Trap and alternative rock and whatever. Okay, the album is Mandyline by The Gathering. I don't know if you know that album. Like most Doom people don't even have a clue about that because the first album wasn't quite there yet. And after this, they did a lot of changing over time. They made 11 albums. It was founded by two brothers, and they made 11 studio albums, 4 live albums, and 4 EPs. And I kind of don't care for most of it, but I did like this album a lot. Um, it's their third album, and it's beautiful soaring, female vocals. It's atmospheric. Again, there's a sort of a goth thing. I think in the 90s, I was really discovering that and becoming kind of attracted to it, but I knew I wasn't going to play that. That's not my mainstay. I'm more of most of the Doom I listen to is bluesy oriented, but somewhat atmospheric. But that's why I liked them so much, is because it was almost like nobody knew about it, so it was like I had it to myself. It was a personal soundtrack. I kind of like it when nobody knows the bands I like, because then it's kind of all mine. Then it had what it had. It was described as dark metal, and people compare it a little bit to Paradise Lost and Moonspell. But when I AB'd this album, I went, what? And I went and listened to Moonspell for a minute, and then I listened to it for a minute, and I was like, nah, I don't get that. I don't get it. Maybe I'd have to listen to whole albums, but anyway, I liked it because uplifting. It's sort of positive for Doom, but to me, it's definitely Doom, and it's got Strange Machine is my favorite song on that album. It is the first song on the album. Put it on, you'll see why I like it. It's got all the Doom elements and everything. Like I said, it's weird with that band because after that they weren't that anymore. So I don't know. Maybe I'm bringing something to light nobody ever heard, and they'll go listen to it.
I've heard of them. I can't recall any of their music though.
Well, I wrote it down, so I'm gonna go check them out when we're done here.
Mandyline. Modern, to compare it to something modern, have you ever heard of They Watch Us from the Moon?
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did. Yes, I did. Yeah.
It's a little similar to that. Anyway, a lot of atmosphere, female soaring vocals, but it's slow and trippy, keyboards.
Awesome.
Synth.
Great stuff,
Anyway,
man.
I guess that's that one. Now I come to my heavy ones. Go ahead.
Well, you were mentioning bluesier stuff, and my pick here is definitely more on the bluesy side. I fucking just dig the guitar tone on this so much, just so killer. I love the fuzz. I love the harmonica on this record, and that's One by Goatsnake. It's, their 1999 release, almost left the 90s, but I love the bluesiness and the grooves on this record. I'm such a big fan of Sun, so of course I really love this record, and just to hear a more groovier bluesy version of that is really, really nice compared to just holding a note for 5 minutes. But this is it's just a killer fucking record. It's one of those records where you just kind of want to drink and drive in the desert to it, and that cover with the Viking ship with the Confederate flag.
Yeah.
It's just so crazy. But I feel if there were Confederate Vikings, this would be their fucking anthem, for sure. It's just so badass. Just such a fucking killer record. But yeah, love Goatsnake. Really, really great stuff. And again, just want to say such a killer fucking band name. Goatsnake, so awesome. I've heard people bash them and be like, that's such an awful band name. I'm like, nah. I feel it fits really well with the music. But yeah, One by Goatsnake is definitely a top 5 for me when it comes to 90s doom metal. But anyway, we bring it back around to our number 3 pick with Carcuss John.
I agree with you 100% on the Goatsnake. They're just killer, crushing, and the production. I think they were finally figuring out that maybe analog was better.
100%.
Still, even though everyone was doing the digital thing, man, that Goatsnake is the heavy of the heavy. Okay, my number 3 is Saint Vitus. How could we leave them off the list?
Of course.
Saint Vitus, Die Healing. Um, People don't. People kind of overlook that one for some reason. I don't, because I think it's probably their heaviest. There's less structure and melody to it, just crushing riffs and agony. It's like heat-soaked misery almost. That's the way I would describe that record. And so, Saint Vitus was prolific in the '90s, but I think that one's their best. I like that one.
Great record. So good. A lot of that like 90s Vitus stuff is really underrated,
Yep,
I think.
agreed. And then that live album that they did is maybe one of my top 10 all-time favorite live records. I'm talking right up there with Machine Head, or Deep Purple, Made in Japan. Um, Grand Funk Live. Any of those. That Saint Vitus live is right up there with it. It's just so good.
And you wouldn't think like a doom metal live album could be that good, because like doom metal is really hard to pull off when it comes to live records,
Yeah,
I think, but that is I gotta, I'll re-listen to that after this. Like I forgot how good of a fucking record
yeah.
that is. So good.
And most people aren't really into quote unquote live records, but I think that's where you capture the real magic of a band. Because in fact, I was at a celebration of life for a guy here in town that started a band called Dead Rising, and his drummer basically just said the first time we went into studio, he said, "Look, if I can't play it live, I don't want to trick it up in the studio and put out something that was so spectacular that it can't be pulled off live." And I think that most doom bands had that same attitude. If they couldn't pull off the same vibe live, they just didn't want to do it. And that's why that Vitus live is so good, because it's Saint Vitus 100%, and there's no doubt. And they pull it off. It's brutal. It's so heavy. It's like laying under a stack of cinder blocks, and they just keep piling more on you with every track. But anyway,
My album listening list is just growing by everyone's pick. Like there's so many records I have to check out and re-listen to.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
like
I'm a
just
list
so
guy
much
too.
great
So
shit. Yeah, for sure, man. All right, Alistair,
Yes.
what do you
I
got?
Yeah, I will need to actually watch the episode on when it will be on YouTube actually, because I have both of my hands that are like full, so I can't write down anything at the moment. But I will definitely go and write it down when I will be able to. So um yeah, so my third pick it is from Cathedral, from the UK, right? So
Yeah.
um, so I was actually thinking about it a little bit, because probably the most obvious choice would be Forest of Equilibrium, right? Because it's like a staple in the Doom scene. But I had to be honest with myself, and yes, realized that I actually like more the other album, the album after Forest of Equilibrium, which is the Ethereal Mirror, because probably there are in that album there are a little bit more like dynamics in the song structures. In For what in my opinion, there is a yeah, they are like pushing it a little bit. They are rocking out even definitely more than the Forest of Equilibrium album. So, and also personally, like for even for my guitar, playing stuff, like I like a lot the work of Gus Jennings, in that album in particular. So. Yeah, so that's my choice. I It's a really cool album. It's doomy in some riffs are definitely heavy and doomy. Some are more like faster riffs. They are all blend and mixed together perfectly. So yes, uh, 100% my choice. Yeah.
Killer album cover. too.
Yes, yes, too, as
Yeah.
well. Yes.
Yeah. Love
Yeah,
the
yeah.
art of that band.
Yes.
All right, Tommy.
Well, we've already covered this one. I kind of have a second for it, but I couldn't hardly leave it out because I did listen to it a lot. So Electric Wizard, Come My Fanatics was my number three. It's the second album. Now, look, I could say Electric Wizard, the self-titled one, almost as much as this, as far as how much I wanted to hear it, but I felt like it progressed. I felt like Electric Wizard, the first one, they knew what they wanted, they were doing it and everything, but I think it sounded better on Come My Fanatics. So that's kind of what I would add to what you already said is that it's lighter and they were consciously going for a heavier mix and sound. They wanted it to be crushing. I like that till dropping cinder blocks on you until I love it. And it's typical. It's not polished, but it sounds heavier. What can I say? There's well, how could I describe it? Memorial riffs, crushing guitars, atmospheric depth. You know what was good about it? The riffs are really chunky. They're not just melted all together. You can hear the stereo stuff happen, but when it's chunking, it chunks. I don't know. This is the best thing I got. When, when it's chunking, it
Yeah.
chunks.
No, I got what you mean.
And it kind of grooves a little bit. There's a little pinch of swing, and then all of a sudden it's just kind of floating in an atmosphere, and you're not sure what's going to happen. And I'm not sure there. I think I get this feeling they were looking at each other in the studio, and go, "Oh yeah, let's go now." And some of it might have been slightly improv. It feels like it.
Hmm.
I'll start singing when I feel like singing, that kind of thing. Anyway, I really like that album a lot better than the first one. Well, a lot better, but better than the first one. But you're right, the early stuff was killer. I have to say, the one I listened to the most of theirs was eventually was the same as everybody else. It was Witchcraft Today and Dope Throne. Those are the ones I listened to the most. But for
I
the
do love
90s,
that record though. Like
but for the
Return
90s,
Trip is,
yeah.
yeah, great pick, man. Well, this is an album that might be a little controversial in terms of like, is this more traditional heavy metal? Just got into the 90s and 93. This is a band I think that is extremely underrated, and that is Iron Man with their album Black Knight. Just fucking killer, man. Al Morris is so good. Just such an amazing riff master. I think he passed away very recently,
Mhm.
but just such an amazing record. There's a lot of influence from like those first three Sabbath, and I hear a lot of Mob Rules on it too in terms of the riffage, but just so good. You get those classic lyrics about, drugs, women, running away from home, just like classic Doom stuff. Um, Life's Toll is one of my favorite cuts off this, just so heavy. I also like Leaving Town and The Liar, just so good. Such an underrated band and album. I feel like when people talk about doom metal, especially the more like proto metal, like Pentagram kind of stuff, like there's so many bands that are left out. And it's like, yeah, there's like Candlemass, there's Pentagram, there's all this, but Iron Man is just so great. Obviously, the name's influenced by Sabbath, but so killer. They never really got any recognition. They never really got any exposure from what I know, but just amazing songwriting and some of like the best riffs in that style of like traditional doom I've ever heard. Really, really great stuff. But Black Knight by Iron Man, so good. One of my favorite doom records like ever, honestly.
We're on the same page, Brandon. I actually got to see them. They were a bucket list band for me, and I had already bought tickets to an event out in Las Vegas, of all places. Your idea of drinking, drugging, and women and wine, women and wheels, and of course I had to see them in Vegas, but but it was, I didn't even realize they were on the bill because there were some bands that I knew about that I wanted to see. Woefat, Solitude Eternus, Hooded Menace was there at the time. and I thought, there's a band that doesn't tour much, and I could get to see them. And then Iron Man was on the bill, and I thought, how in the world, that is serendipity of the highest order. And I thought, oh, that's amazing. And they were absolutely crushing, despite there was some friction going on. I'm not quite sure what happened, but alcohol was involved, and we all know how that that can skew our good judgment sometimes. But yes, to your point, Iron Man is freaking awesome. So, what, number two? Are we looking at number two?
Yeah, we're looking at number two with you, but I just want to say like such an amazing band. And I think didn't they go on hiatus for a little bit
Yeah.
in the 2000s and came back in like the 2010s, I believe, or like '08
Yep.
or something. Yeah. Which such a shame, like that nothing ever really happened with them. Cause if they really got like if the ball really got rolling with them, like I would have loved to see like a full fleshed out career from them, like the potential. It's really unfortunate, and that's a lot of doom bands, unfortunately, from
What did
that
they put
era.
out? Like four records,
Yeah, I think it was
an
like
EP, and then three full lengths.
right. I think it was three. Yeah,
Hmm.
but that record from '93 is so good, though.
Yeah.
You know, just
Yeah.
such a classic.
He was a monster. Raul was a riff monster for sure.
Yeah, Black Knight, forever a classic. I'm not sure if that was ever pressed. I think it was like put on CD, but
I think it was a CD only thing.
yeah, which I'm afraid to look up like even how much they go for. Maybe they've been bootlegged or repressed, but yeah, it kind of seems like one of those one-off bands. But all right, yeah, Carcass John, your number
My number two, this is
two.
another controversial pick probably for some, but the Swedish bands don't get enough credit for their innovation, I don't think, because they all kind of they there was so many of them happening all at once. And I am steeped in early Swedish Gothenburg sound, Swedish death metal, and so forth. And I know Therion really went off the rails after their first three records, but that first album, Into Darkness from '91, that has all the elements. And for the same reason I love Paramecium, there was heaviness, there was ambience, there was crushing guitar riff, heavy drums. I mean, it sounded like they were playing in a giant cathedral with the drum sound. There was some speedy riffing and so forth that give it the death metal feel. But to me, that personified that new trend in doom metal. And once again, like the Decomposed, it was sort of it was kind of laying the foundation for some of the newer bands in our current time frame that are doing that same sort of ambient funeral doom stuff. And so Therion's Into Darkness. If you can find a copy, I actually have a. I didn't know if we were pulling records and showing records, but I actually have an original pressing, and
Awesome.
this will go to the grave with me because that's a tough one to find, and it's just one of my favorite records because I love the mixture of, as much as I love straight up certain types of music, I like the blend of heavy and soft and melodic and brutal and so forth. So I can't and what they did after that, where they're wearing tuxedos and they have a quartet of opera singers and whatever. I don't know what that's all about, but they're Swedes, and so you sort of learn to expect it after the first or second, record. I think that's why Carnage didn't do anything after Michael Amott left. Then they didn't know what to do, so they just disbanded and went off and did other things. But anyway, Therion Into Darkness, that's my number two.
Great pick. Really good stuff. I have another Swedish band in my lineup, but like a lot of great Swedish doom from the '90s
Yeah.
for sure. All right, Alister.
Yeah. So yeah, number two. Well, things are getting harder, I would say. Like, if I have to like to make a list of the top five, which is what I've been trying to do tonight. Actually, for me, it's night, as you can see. So basically, I had to. yeah, to think through this number two a little bit, because I would put as number two out of the 90s, probably Holy Mountain by Sleep, which is actually, uh, like it's impossible to not not to mention, in even if maybe we are talking more about stoner and doom, or stoner rock, and doom. But so yeah, my second place, it should be Holy Mountain, which everyone knows. But I was going also back to St. Virus, a bit, because I was thinking also about the five album, which is basically the V, which is the in the Roman number is just five. But maybe a little bit, another a little bit underappreciated album from the 90s, or in general, in the doom scene. That was That is a really good album, in my opinion. Is with Wino. The Wino's vocals are really damn good in that album, in my humble opinion. And also, yeah, uh, uh, yeah, I would say some of probably my favorite, some of my favorite San Vitus songs are in that album, like just like Living Backwards, something. It's just a great record. Like 1990 or 91, I can't remember. Probably 1990. Um, so yeah, I would put both this album as number two, if I'm allowed to do it, like both Holy Mountain and Five or V of San Virus. And I wouldn't, elaborate much on Holy Mountain, because like, yeah, I don't think there is anything more to say that it hasn't been said already about Holy Mountain. So there you go. Yeah.
Definitely a classic for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Tommy, number
Yeah,
two.
Holy Mountain was on my thing, but
Yeah.
how could you not? And I said somebody else is going to say Holy Mountain, so it's
Well, I said dope smoker. That was on my list, but then I just said someone's going to say that, so I got an alternative pick.
Yeah.
Wasn't
almost
it? It
would have
was
been
It was Jerusalem in the 90s, right? I always I don't
yeah.
really know the whole evolution of that record, because it started as like Jerusalem and then turned into Dope Smoker
Or
later,
something.
right? Yeah. It's the same record, but
It's a, it's a cool history for that
yeah.
album. Yeah, I almost went with Oddfellows Rest Crowbar on this, but it was like what favorite. So I went by like what I actually did listen to more often than other things, which isn't necessarily in line with everybody. Um, how about if okay, see if you know, because somebody knows somebody. With strength in sight, tears of stone shall fall from his eyes. I just love that line. Anyway, apparently, I think Lyle Stedham wrote that. So we're talking Solitude Eternus, Into the Depths of Sorrow. So I thought that was a defining the genre type album. I just don't think it could be any more. It was the USA answer to Candlemass. I think that's what Solitude Eternus. I've seen that before, and I think that's true. I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg on that. Candlemass came way back because I was on Metal Blade when that first Candlemass came out. I remember touring 86, 87 or whatever, and we had a Candlemass cassette in the. It could have been a preview cassette, but they came out pretty early.
Yeah,
I'm
Epicus. I'm
not
trying to
sure,
think.
I'm not sure which came out first, but I don't think anybody was trying to be like the other one or anything. But they were certainly a huge influence. When you bring up Solitude Eternus, everybody's respectful when they talk about them. I don't think anybody just doesn't like them. So
It started in '84, according to
Oh, really? No
84.
kidding.
Yeah.
Solitude Eternus?
No,
Epicus
no,
was 86.
no, Candlemass.
Candlemass.
Mhm.
Yeah, they started right about the same time we got real cranked up, about 85. I remember having a cassette in the tour situation. So anyway, with Candlemass, if Robert's if Robert's vocals aren't enough for you, you've got your friend John Perez and Edgar Rivera to wow you with their guitar work. It is really incredible on that album. Every bit of it's incredible. And I like how it's pretty early. I like how the drums will be going along doing, doom stuff. And then all of a sudden there's some very controlled double kick comes in. It's like, oh, you didn't really have to do that, but it's a plus. I'm like, it's not all the time though. It's sectional and it's placed very well. As somebody who likes to record a lot, I think that's neat that the guy, it's not overdone, but it's there. So the guy, I just called him. I can't think of who it is. I don't know. Who's the drummer?
Well, that's an interesting question because they sort of have a new drummer at this point. He's not new. I think he's just a part timer because there's Steve. Gosh, I should know this because they're from right here. Steve Mosley. No.
Right. Yeah,
Uh,
aren't they from? They're Houston more than Fort Worth, Dallas area, right?
no,
I
they're
think
actually from John Covington. Golly.
John Covington.
So John Covington evidently is still the drummer, but Logan Cade is kind of filling in. And to your point, Tommy, he was saying, well, he thought it would be an easy gig because he's used to playing fast. He plays in Ghoultown and some other bands, and so he said, well, this I should be able to do this. But as he realized those little intricacies, like the double kick fill here and there, and just at the right time, he said he had to basically learn to pay attention the whole time when he's playing because it was just a different style than what he was used to. But evidently pulled it off because they headlined "Keep It True" this year, and I guess they're doing more gigs now. And fingers crossed that everyone stays healthy and sober, and they do another record maybe.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
have noticed that they seem to be showing up, playing around more and doing more. I thought they were. It seemed like they had took a very long hiatus, or they might have decided we're done. But here they
well,
are.
it wasn't for the lack of trying. I've been friends with John Perez a long time. In fact, the story of how he met is kind of funny. I had an underground zine called the Hepatitis News, and I reviewed Downfall by Solitude Eternus, which I think was what, 97? When that came out, anyway, I said, what an appropriate name for this record, because this will be the last that you'll hear from Solitude Eternus. It's so bad. But what I didn't realize is that they had sent a pre-production, basically scratch tracks and some other stuff that hadn't been mixed or hadn't been really, and Pavement just put it out as is without any blending of tracks and without it was a mess. And so the Metal Minds, I think in Poland, got the rights to the record, and they mixed it and edited and mastered the thing properly. And I heard the remastered correct version, and of course I have a new appreciation for it. But that's how I met John, and he was a good sport about it. He said, you were right, it was a mess, but he said, but we'll for sure do another record. But uh, he works at a local record shop here in Fort Worth, and I see him frequently when he's not on the road. And I tried and tried and tried to get them back together, and he tried out other singers, and he said, without Robert, we're not going to be Solitude Eternus. So he just stuck to his guns, and finally, Robert circled back around, and he's back in the fold. And I think they're doing great. They headlined Hell's Heroes last year. They headlined Keep It True. And I think they're back on track. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, they're on my
That's
bucket list for sure. That's a band
yeah,
I'd
that's
love
all
to
good
see.
news. That's all totally good news because I love them. They're awesome. In fact, an interview asked me one time, "What would be your dream signing?" And I said, "Solitude Eternus," without skipping a millisecond didn't happen before I said Solitude Eternus.
Yeah, they're good people,
I'm
and
like,
they
don't think
and
happen,
they
doesn't
just
happen. But
yeah.
that would be on my little humble label. That would be awesome.
Well, and that alone record, the last one that they did, has extra significance for me too, and it gets too personal there from that point on. But JP and I have long discussions about the importance of that particular record, and at least in my own personal life. So, but anyway, hopefully they'll power through whatever, and they'll find more success because they deserve it. I mean, they helped define a genre, like you said. They were the U.S. version of Candlemass, which to me is a huge compliment.
Yeah.
Great
Did you
stuff.
say the album you said was Alone?
Yes,
That's my favorite album by them. Yeah.
I bar none. In fact, I think if you get the new vinyl version or the Metal Mind version from Poland, it has a bonus track called "Embrace," and that might be their best song ever.
Oh God, I got to get it.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
Awesome. Great
anyway,
stuff.
sorry to
And I
steal
just
your
want to
thunder.
say, no, it's all good. And I wish Doom bands did what thrash bands do, where they all tour in groups. Because I feel like a lot of the Doom bands will kind of just like tour on their own. But to see like them with like Pentagram, Candlemass, like they can do some pretty big venues if they did like a group tour. And I wish more Doom metal bands did that because a lot of them like tour solo from what I've seen.
Mm.
But
We
Well, funny you should say that, Brandon, because Henry Vasquez, the drummer for Pentagram, is friends with John Perez, and who's friends with, it just goes on, and it's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever,
right.
uh, and those types of things may have a possibility of happening.
Let's make it happen 100%. Yeah, that would be fucking
but
unreal.
over here at Black Doomba, if you ever notice our bands, that most of the time we're touring in groups like that. So when you go see, I mean, recently we had, so it'd be like Black Moon Cult and Megaton Communion and Grave Next Door do 9 shows together. Then something other. So that's something I work on in our label is to have the groups interact with each other, gig swap, tour together. Maybe they can even share equipment sometimes and go together. A lot of times I put myself as the opening act and do like a Black Doomba pop-up store at each place. I don't My merch is in there. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about everybody. So yeah, we try to do that over there. Make make it a make them all label things. But we try to, we bring in people from other places too. But yeah, group touring and supporting each other like that gives you a family, a community, a sense of community.
And plus, it makes it a lot more affordable. I know that money is the key there to getting out on the road, and when you can save money, and you can do $1 million show for pennies on the dollar because you have a group of like Rotting Corpse and Gamma Side, two heavy hitters in the Texas thrash metal scene. I mean, they're gigging out there together, and half their members are playing one band or the other. And John Perez started Rotting Corpse of all people, and of course, talk about tapping the brakes. He went from Rotting Corpse to Solitude because he wanted to play heavy music, heavier, slower music. But yeah, that type of thing should happen, and it might very well happen. You
Well, I'm
never.
going to keep hoping for
Yeah.
sure. And to keep this thing going, I know we've talked about some Swedish doom here. This is a band, they put out a record in 92. And if I heard this without knowing anything about this band, I would have been like, wow, I guess Ozzy's back doing doom metal. And that is Count Raven's Destruction of the Void. This record is just killer, just great traditional doom metal. The classic, 3 to 4 riffs per song. But hey, if it works, fucking, no need to overcomplicate things for sure, especially with a band like this. Love the solos too. A lot of cool like guitar bends and dives within the soloing, which I feel like really build on like the atmosphere this album is, but just really, really great stuff. Uh, Count Raven is like a really underrated Swedish doom band, and I really don't see this band being talked about enough. But really, really killer records from them, and Destruction of the Void has to be like my favorite of all their stuff. But just really, really great doom, and like in terms of like the traditional stuff, like I can't believe this band isn't like even close to the same level as like Candlemass, because this record is like for me like, when you compare this to the Candlemass stuff after the first two, it's like on par if not better. I think like just so good, so good. Not sound like a broken record, but I really, really like this album. I've been trying to chase a vinyl of it or just some kind of physical copy. Haven't found one yet. It's really hard being in like New England to find Doom stuff, but really hope to like get something on my hands soon. But yeah, Count Raven, really, really great.
I got it on my watch list, Brandon. You just never know.
Yeah, well, let me know. All right, that brings us to our number one here.
Well, somebody already mentioned them, and we've mentioned them several times, but Solitude Aeturnus Through the Darkest Hour. I mean, you could pick any of those in the middle '90s. Even Downfall, now that it's been mixed and mastered and been snipped together correctly. But Through the Darkest Hour, as much as I like Adagio and as much as I like Beyond the Crimson Horizon, I just think that that's the one that sort of solidified them as a heavy, dark, and it achieved all their goals. And like I said, plus they used the equipment from that decomposed band, which sort of makes the Doom circle complete. So that would be my choice.
Cool. All right, right over to Alister.
Yeah. So no surprise. Like I'm I'm seeing a pattern here because my first choice is "Calm My Fanatics" by Electric Wizard. Well, and yeah, like that album, that is prob my favorite Electric Wizard album. And we even did a cover with our band over here of Dementia. You know, it's even hard to describe like how much that album changed my life in general. Like it's really hard to put into words. It's an experience, right? Um, it's like probably the best definition of that album that I have heard somewhere was this is the album that gets you stoned even without smoking, right? Something along those lines. So, and I think it's wonderful. It's absolutely true. It brings you into some other other dimensions and stoned dimensions, but really like really absolutely a masterpiece. And so for me, this is the first choice, and I will stick to it forever, I guess. Yeah.
Just a classic. So good.
Yes.
So a really influential like record too. Like there's still
Yes.
bands that are like so influenced by that album today that
Absolutely.
are huge. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And so, like, if talking about the 90s, they are like, they completely changed the game of the Doom in a way because like their first album was in the vein of maybe even Cathedral, something like that. Definitely more the traditional side of things. But with that second album, they were like completely, mind blowing and completely changing the perspective. about the doom and stoner, and yeah, so they are, for me, they are absolutely the king of the stoner doom, and they deserve to be. So,
100%. All right, Tommy, you're number one.
Oh dear. Yeah. So when I'm not on tour, I tend to keep farmers hours. I'm up when it's dark. It's 4 a.m. Some people stay up till 4. I get up at 4. I don't mean to, I just do. And I'm outside gardening when the sun barely starts peeking up. I'm out leaned over pulling weeds and all that. And this morning, while I was doing that, I was listening to October Rust by Typo Negative, and that's sort of my number one. The reason I'm saying that is because in the 90s, that's the album I listened to the most, over and over and over. I was trying to figure out what is it about. There was so much there. And, again, it was all atmospheric and all that stuff. And it's a gothic doom metal aesthetic. There were stories in it, and I was trying to figure out what's he talking about. And I found, it's like Green Man is a celebration of nature. It's sort of a positive thing. There's nothing like pulling weeds in your garden at 6:30 in the morning and listening to "I'm the Green Man" and you're singing
yeah.
along with it. And it really feels right. Redwater tells about Peter's dad passing away on Christmas Day, from what I understand, and praise of Bauhaus. There was, I think there was several love songs on there. Oh, my favorite song on there, actually, besides Redwater, is probably Wolf Moon, which I guess is about a woman's menstrual cycle. Am I wrong? Anyway, that's what I've always gotten out of it. And I'll tell you who does a great cover of that song, Oceans of Slumber. Listen to Cammy Beverly sing Wolf Moon in Oceans of Slumber. It's awesome. I don't know what else to put.
And talk about tapping the brakes. Dauber Beverly, the drummer for Oceans of Slumber, was the drummer for the infamous Insect Warfare, one of the greatest grindcore bands ever.
Oh, I know.
And he's a beast. He literally could play anything. And then coupled with her voice, the Oceans of Slumber stuff is pretty amazing.
It's amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I've seen them 2 or 3 times, and from Atlanta, it's interesting. I was wondering if I was ever gonna get to see them. They finally got out enough where they made it here a couple of times. Usually I bump into bands when I'm in their hometown. I played on a bill that was a long time ago in Houston, that was it was Dauber's other band, Insecticide Warfare. Is that it?
And their Insect Warfare, and then he was
Warfare
Malignant Altar.
Insect Warfare was the opening band, and I didn't know him then. And Solitude Eternus was the next band, King's X, Hallows Eve, and Hellstar. I look back now and go, holy crap, that was really a great lineup. I didn't realize when I was there, it was like, oh, this is a pretty good show. But, years later, you look back and go, holy crap, that was really good. And there were a lot of people in there that I grew to admire over years.
That was Bang Your Head 2, wasn't it?
It was at the place called the Meridian.
Yeah, I did some production work on that show.
Oh, we were there in the same room then.
Amazing. Well, I know Casey Orr. Wasn't he a member of Hallows Eve at some point?
No.
No?
For a minute in a lineup that I wasn't happy with, there was
Okay.
there was somebody from Rigor Mortis in there, Doyle Bright.
Oh, Doyle Bright. Okay.
Yeah, well, I tried to line up. I did get the original lead singer back, and then we had Doyle Bright. Yeah, he was there at that show. That's right. So that lineup did 5 shows, and one of the better ones was that one. But then there were after the show stories.
Yeah, believe me, I'm fully.
Everybody says, "What are the stories?" And I go, "I can't." The good ones are the ones that some people have to like die before I tell them. I can't.
Yeah, I lived through some of that. Bruce Corbett and I have known each other for 30 years until his unfortunate passing about 5 years ago. And so I heard I heard the scuttlebutt. But yeah, we were in the same room together. Bang Your Head too.
I remember that show in particular because shortly after that, I began to realize what all the lineup was, and I was like, man, I'm surprised there were a good many people there. But if you did that show now, good Lord, there would be a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But
I'd be
that's
there.
the first time I heard Dober, but I didn't know him until he was doing Oceans of Slumber, and then when he came into Atlanta, that's when I made a point of meeting him. Nicest guy ever.
Well, if you want to check out his sort of mid-pace stuff, Malignant Altar was his band that they did a full length and an EP and a 7-inch, and it's spectacular death metal. It really is. I can't speak highly enough of. Well, he's a good dude. She's a great person too, and has a wonderful voice with Oceans of Slumber. But I lean more to the other side, and Insect Warfare are like the masters of disaster for me. So, but just the fact that they can pull it off live, and I watched them do it because we had a show at a place called Sound Exchange in Houston, and if you can imagine Insect Warfare playing in a record store for more than 100 people with all the doors and windows open so the people out in the parking lot could hear it. There must have been 200 people there, but 100 people inside the building, and it was
I've been there.
complete.
I know what the Sound Exchange is. It's about the size of Growler Records,
Well,
or
it's a house is what it is, and it was the main floor was all downstairs, or the record area was all downstairs, and it was total complete mayhem.
I
Just the
can't
way.
imagine 100 people being in there.
Well, it wasn't easy, and that's why the windows and doors came open, and people were crawling in and out of windows and so forth. It was a typical Houston fashion. But
Yeah,
anyway, that's for another show.
You're
I
right.
love Houston. I've had a lot of good times in playing in Texas. I love playing in the east side of Texas, up and down the strip, back and
Yep.
forth. We go all the way over there just to go up and down and everything, and then come all the way back to Atlanta. And I mean, it's like a 2-day drive to get over there. But once we're over there, we can do like 10 shows up and down, and they're awesome. Every one of them's awesome, even the
Yep.
smaller places like Hubbard and Corsica. We have played everywhere over there.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Yeah, great stories. Now just to wrap this thing up, when it comes to this band, my number one, it's funny because the album I usually have been returning to most recently is actually The Sciences. It's crazy how like that record is like just become like one of my favorites, even though it's like kind of their last album. But I have to say Sleep's Holy Mountain. This one is just great. The bluesy and twangy elements of this record really blend nicely with the doom, and even like some of the bluegrass elements are really, really cool. There's a lot of like cool dynamics on this, especially for a doom metal record. Dragonaut, the Druid, Evil Gypsy, Solomon's Theme, Holy Mountain, Inside the Sun. Do I really have to say anything else? Like, this is just such a fucking classic. Love it to death. I've gotten so obliterated to this record so many times. It's a great album to drink to. It's a great album to smoke to. It's just awesome to just have on at all times. Such a banger. I can't imagine it being the 90s and getting this blind and putting it on for the first time would have made my head explode. Just great stuff. Great stuff. And definitely foresees like the future of this band. They could have gone in so many directions, but to think next was Dope Smoker is like, you would never have predicted it. They went from like this really bluesy bluegrass, like, a lot of the songs on this, there's like a lot of tracks it's like 9 songs, 50 minutes, especially for like a doom record. And then to go 1 song or like 2 songs, an hour, 7 minutes for the next release is crazy. Would never have thought, but yeah, just a classic.
And then The
Classic.
Sciences is a bunch of 10 and 9 to 10 minute songs.
It's like a mix between the two,
Right.
It's like
I really love The Sciences too. I think that's by far that's out of the 90s realm, but I think that's my favorite Sleep is The Sciences.
what was that, 2017?
Yeah. Because I saw him
believe.
at Psycho Vegas, and I thought, are they just going to drone through 45 minutes of Dope Smoker? And no, they didn't. They blew doors, and it was so impressive. and they were loud. They were louder than Motorhead, and that's no joke.
It's a band I never got to see. I couldn't see them. Not a lot of bands come to New England, unfortunately, but yeah, would have just loved to see them. I did get the Dope Smoker box set recently, and it comes with a radio edit of Dope Smoker that's like 4 minutes, just so like on a 45, just so amazing, so amazing. But yeah, this has been our show. This has been awesome. Thank you guys for being here. I have a lot of homework after this. Definitely glad we did 90s opposed to 80s because there's only so many 80s, and I feel like by the time we got to the 90s, there was so much diversity and so many bands. Um, I wanted to talk about Acid Bath so bad, but just definitely more of the sludge kind of like just very weird. And that's for another episode for sure, like bands like that. But there's so much crossover, and you can find so much doom in so many like grind bands, sludge bands. And again, for another episode, but a lot of great stuff, a lot of great picks from you guys. Thank you again for being on Disturbing the Priest. Always great to have you. And hopefully we'll see you all again on future episodes very soon. I'm Brandon Battick, and this has been Disturbing the Priest.
It's death! I've just seen death!